Hello, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk Football. My name is John Halpin alongside Chris Palmer. Chris Palmer, how we doing today?
Doing good, man. Another week in the books. Moving forward closer to the trade deadline, and as we get closer to that, we get closer to the end of the year and playoffs. So things are starting to get in full motion.
I know we are just exiting week 7, heading into week 8 at the moment, and we're coming near the halfway points, and things are starting to shape up very interesting in the league. So without further ado, Chris Palmer, you ready for our week 7 recap?
Yeah, this is gonna be fun.
Okay, let's get it started with the Jags getting it done against the New Orleans Saints, 31 to 24. New Orleans did have a chance to tie at the end, but their tight end Jake Moreau dropped the touchdown in the end zone. But man, it was still a great game to watch.
Very fun game, very tough loss for New Orleans. But this is the difference between a contending team and a potential team. Jags are a contender. Saints got potential.
The Jags moved to 5-2, and the Saints moved to 3-4. Let's stick to the NFC South. Let's go talk about the Atlanta Falcons getting the win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 16-13. Bijan did not play, but it was all Tyler Algier. That did not stop them from running their game plan. They just kept running the ball, and staying alive.
Yeah, great game. Very low scoring game. Kind of wasn't expecting that. But shout out to Kyle Pitts for that one amazing one handed catch. He kept grabbing over the flats. It was a catch to see. Very cool highlight to watch.
He caught it behind his back. That is crazy.
Serious athlete with that.
Oh man. So shout out to Atlanta for getting the win right there. Let's move on to the Chicago Bears getting the win over the Las Vegas Raiders. We did talk about this game last week, and this was Tyler Badgett getting the win 30-12 over the Raiders. And they move on to a tougher opponent in the AFC West this upcoming week against the Chargers on Sunday night primetime. But I'm excited to see what the Bears have.
Yeah, another good tough win. They're at like a turning point. I feel like they're getting to a point where they could either be good or they're gonna fall on their faces, and that was a good hard win over Vegas.
Yeah, that was a solid win over Vegas. Let's move on to Cleveland getting the win over the Indianapolis Colts, 39-38. But unfortunately, there was another team that was on the field, and that was the referees, really costing the Colts the game. Man, the refs are undefeated this year, right?
Oh my God, the refs are such a problem. It's almost like these guys are doing this as a hobby and they have other professions.
For
um,
those of you who don't know, it was fourth down for the Browns. They needed a touchdown to take the lead over the Colts, and the Colts got the sack and a forced fumble on fourth down, but they were called for illegal contact, which then came to a first down on the goal line, and Kareem Hunt just punched it right in.
yeah, it was questionable at best, that penalty call. But I'm gonna say the Cleveland Browns are look so bad when Deshaun Watson's on the field. I'm gonna call that one right now. They do not look good for all the money they spent on him.
No, PJ Walker seems to be the better quarterback over Deshaun Watson, which is unfortunate
It's,
for the
it's a
Browns,
lot
but
to say,
it's the Cleveland Browns. What can you expect?
right?
The Browns are going to Brown, man. So, anyway, let's move on to some NFC division rivals in the New York Giants and the Washington Commanders. Giants getting a solid win, 14-7. Very low scoring, very bland game, but solid win for the G-men.
Yeah, you kind of expect this coming out of the NFC East. Very low scoring, very weak when they play each other. Safe for the Eagles, but that's because their league's ahead of the rest of the division and most of the conference.
Mm-hmm.
The Commanders got to get something together and start learning how to beat their division rivals because the Giants have like stake in them at this point in time. They just don't know how to beat them.
Yeah, man. I just can't get a pulse on the Commanders. I know we're gonna talk about them later on in the year, but man, I just cannot get a pulse on the Commanders.
And as much as we want to, because we love Ron Rivera, there's just nothing there.
Yeah, they struggle on offense and defense, and it's gonna be a whole can of worms unpacking them when we talk them later in the year. But let's move on to my Baltimore Ravens getting the win over the Detroit Lions, 38-6, and this is what the Ravens look like when we cash in.
You see, this is what it looks like when your offense can produce points and produce positive yards in the red zone. But I don't think anyone expected the Lions to not be able to produce anything on offense. You know, they've been electric against some of the better teams in the league, and this was another game that they needed to prove themselves, and this is kind of a step back for them, so kind of concerning.
Lions play the Las Vegas Raiders next Monday night. That will be a great game to watch. So let's move on to New England getting the win over the Buffalo Bills, 29-25. That moves Josh Allen's record against the Patriots to 5-5, and Belichick gets a solid win under his belt.
I told you, man, Bill Belichick is a chess master. You cannot count him out against any team, especially if it's in his division. He's been doing this for 20-something years, and the Bills are reckless. They can't be trusted right now.
I know, and that was another game that we talked about last week. So, anyway, let's move on to an NFC West matchup. The Seattle Seahawks getting the win over the Arizona Cardinals, 20-10. Solid win by the Seahawks.
Solid win by the Seahawks, but that dumpster fire in Arizona is just going to keep on burning.
Let it burn, let it burn.
Letting it burn.
Okay, let's move on to your Pittsburgh Steelers getting the win over the Los Angeles Rams. Solid win for the Steelers, moving up to 4-2 for the season. Pretty good.
You know, coming out of the bye, a must-need win. In the first half, it seemed like we were not going to do as well, but that fourth quarter, man, got to give it to Kenny Pickett. 7 for 7, 130-something yards. He had a perfect fourth quarter with no interceptions. So hats off to him. You know, he's making some major improvements. So it's good to see.
That's how you win games, man. You play your best football in the fourth quarter when it matters the most. So shout out to Kenny Pickett for getting it done right there. We have the Kansas City Chiefs getting the win over the Los Angeles Chargers, 31-17. The Chiefs just have the Chargers number, which is so unfortunate, but it was a valiant effort by the Chargers. But even still, Chiefs are on a roll. They moved to 6-1.
I'm trying to keep faith with the Chargers, but as weeks go on, and this is now about 3 seasons deep where they just cannot finish a game. This game really was kind of a wash. We kind of knew that the Kansas City was not going to win this, not going to lose this game. But I don't even have hopes for them for next week with the Chargers. I don't trust them because, again, they can't finish a game. They give up real easy.
Well, they never had the lead in this game, so they were always constantly playing from behind. But even still, their defense just kept giving opportunities and opportunities to Kansas City. And their defense, as much as they can show up, they just don't when it matters the most, which is very upsetting.
100% agreed.
So let's move on to the Denver Broncos getting the win over the Green Bay Packers, 19-17. A very low-scoring affair. But, man, I think this is a very telling game for the Packers, man. Week 1 must have been the anomaly, and this is the standard.
Well, yeah, you know, the famous saying is once an anomaly, twice is a pattern. And, you know, the pattern with the Packers is downhill once again. And, you know, good hard win for the Broncos. You know, still don't really expect much to them. But almost feel like they're playing with nothing to lose. So, fuck it, let's go win a couple games.
They moved to 2-5 for the season. Russ is cooking something, so
don't smell good yet, but we'll see.
Don't smell good, but he's cooking something. So let's move on to the Sunday night primetime game where the Philadelphia Eagles beat the Miami Dolphins 31-17. It was a solid win, but a solid win for the Eagles. But that brotherly shove, man, that's just a lethal play by Nick Sirianni in that offense.
It's going to be a terrible time when Eagles fans start complaining when it gets banned in the offseason next year because it's getting a little much. Getting a little excessive with the tush push.
They seem to do it at least 4 to 5 times a game, which is crazy, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah. But it's funny too because even after the Super Bowl, you and I we talked about it. We said we're going to be seeing a lot more of this in this coming season, and
100%.
Philly has not stopped.
Once blood was drawn, that's what happened.
Yes, sir. So, speaking of blood being drawn, the Minnesota Vikings smelt blood against the San Francisco 49ers, getting a win on Monday night primetime 22-17. Woo, man, what's going on with the Niners?
Mortality. Everyone's human. That's what's happening. And, shout out to the Vikings. I still wouldn't really put my money on Kirk Cousins in prime time, but good hard win. Um, Now it just came to light today that Brock Purdy is in concussion protocol. So
Ooh.
he's questionable for this weekend.
Hmm.
So almost that, and a lot of key players on that offensive front are now hurt going into the second half of the season now. Going to be something else. Sam Darnold is uh, expected to start now. Let's see what Kyle Shanahan can do.
Oh man, that's gonna make for a very interesting Niners team going forward. But with that being said, we're gonna talk more about the Niners later on in this episode. But with that being said, that is our Week 7 recap. Oh my God, so many great games, so many fun games to talk about. But we want to move on to Week 8, where we want to talk about some matchups for this upcoming week and some teams that we definitely have been meaning to talk about. And I want to start with the Houston Texans and the Carolina Panthers,
Hmm.
uh, because we we make it a point here on the show that we like to talk about every team at least once, right? And the Panthers and Texans have been a team that I've been wanting to talk about since like week 3, because this is kind of like both teams are rebuilding, right? But they're doing it little different ways, but they're night and day from one another. One team is
Mm-hmm.
doing a rebuild right and ahead of schedule. Another team looks absolutely abysmal, and it starts with the head coach. Um, the Panthers. Okay, let me back up real quick. Texans are doing it right because they have a lot of new people, a lot of new faces, and that's what you really want to do with the rebuild. You want to get a new head coach, you want to get a new quarterback, new offensive scheme, new players, just new everything. Just start from scratch, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they've been doing it, and they've been putting their faith in all these young coaches and these young players, and they're getting it done. CJ Stroud is on fire this year. He's a very probably at the top of the list for Rookie of the Year nominations. Um, Meanwhile, the Carolina Panthers, they're getting a lot of like old heads, old faces that we've seen before. They had Frank Reich as their head coach, and he's not a bad coach by any means, but he's not new. He's like everyone knows his scheme, everyone knows what he's about. You get you get some old receivers. You get Adam Thielen. I mean, Adam Thielen's been good. To his credit, he's been very good. But they've only been relying on Adam Thielen in in the passing game. Their defense is very little long in the tooth. I love Brian Burns, but they're just not getting it done, man. There's not enough new faces for the Panthers. Whereas opposed to the Texans, there's so much new. They they look like a completely different team than they did last year, and they look better. And I just love the fact that we're watching this matchup is literally the two teams that are rebuilding, the 1 and the 2 spot from the draft, against one another.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. This is a tale of two rebuilds, and it's a great way to put it that they're on two opposite sides of the spectrum on how they're platforming their rebuild. And the only thing I'm gonna count, it goes higher than the head coach. It goes into management and it goes into ownership.
Mhm.
So it's a trickle down effect. If you can't hire the right people, how do you expect them to find the right people? So if you as an owner don't hire the right scouts, drafting personnel, and then goes down to coaching and staffing and everything like that, how do you expect your team to succeed? And then again, you go into Carolina that has all these older players. I love Adam Thielen. I still think he can still be a very solid number 2 on a contending team. Not a lot of people agree with me with that. They think he's a number 3 and maybe even a little less. I don't necessarily see that. He is older, but he is still very productive. Um, the defense, and again, the coach with Frank Reich. Everyone likes him, but like you said, he has a report card a mile thick. Everyone knows his schemes from all the years of him coaching. He's worn out. It's time to start fresh. Can almost sense a fire sale coming out of Carolina now. The trade deadline is just a few days away. But flip the script to Houston, and The one who was, it almost looks like number 2 was supposed to go number 1 because number 1 looks like he should have been Mr. Irrelevant at this point in time. But that which just goes to show that if you don't have the proper scouts, you're going to make mistakes in your rebuild, and that's what it's going to show on the field almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Houston, my hat's off because they made all the right moves. Personally, I still disagree with them getting rid of Lovie Smith. I love Lovie Smith. But they moved on, and they moved forward, and they moved together as a franchise, and now they're ready to go and become something. They have a pulse. And Carolina is really starting to bleed out now. It's almost like they're looking for a lotto spot next year again and hoping they can probably, I would think they would shoot, not for Caleb Williams, but for probably a lineman or a running back.
Yeah, there's just a lot of problems in Carolina right now. I'll start with them. Bryce Young.
God.
Now, you and I, we spoke a lot prior to the draft. We had our own draft episode and everything, and we talked about it and everything. And me personally, I was very high on C.J. Stroud. I only saw I don't watch that much college football, full disclosure, but I saw enough games of him where I'm like, this guy, he can get it done. Like, he just has that persistence to just get it done. Whereas Bryce Young, I thought he's from Alabama. He is more of a product of a system. And that system is under Nick Saban. Nick Saban is the Bill Belichick of college football. Like, everyone knows, like, he's going to draft the best players. He's going to get the best talent and everything like that. But it's like, it's really telling to show, like, how Bryce Young looked with all these Alabama studs around him, right? He looked like the best, and that's why Carolina drafted him first. And you see him now in Carolina, not surrounded by the best. And he struggles a lot. Like, right now he has, in 6 games, he has 967 yards, 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Okay? Compared to C.J. Stroud, who has 1,660 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 1 interception.
Playing his heart out, man.
It is just leaps and bounds how much C.J. Stroud was more ready for the NFL than Bryce Young was. And I think that, did he have good players around him in Ohio State, C.J. Stroud? Yes, he did. But did he have the talent level compared to Alabama? Probably not, no. But yet he's still getting it done. He's getting it done with Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Damian Pierce. He's getting it done with, like, guys that we've never heard of prior to the season.
Because they're so young.
And
that's the thing.
And they're gelling well, man. They're just gelling so well. And I shout out to DeMeco Ryan, head coach of the Houston Texans, man. Like, he had a vision for this team, and they score points, and they play hard. And one thing that's really killer for the Carolina Panthers is that they have the worst defense in the league by far, because their defense gives up on average 31 points a game.
Wow. That's not right.
Think about that. Like, think about, like, it, as an offense, you have a feeling that your team is going to give up about 30 points a game.
Right, and we don't have an offense to even close to answer.
No. Carolina is just, they will probably be the bottom of the barrel team, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because if you still get that number 1 overall pick, you go for the best defensive player there. You go for the best defensive edge rusher right there. Boom. You take whoever that stud is, because we're seeing now that teams that do draft high on defensive ends, they tend to pay off. Just look at all, like, even some of the vets, like obviously Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, who was drafted first overall in his class. TJ Watt was drafted high. Joey Bosa. In recent years, Aiden Hutchinson,
right?
Trayvon Walker,
Max Crosby,
and even Will Anderson, on the
Right.
Texans last year. So
Right.
so Carolina, I'm sorry, your season looks to be done this year. But if you make the right moves in the offseason, you might be able to contend next year. Maybe. But this year, the Texans could compete for their division this year. And that's
100% I agree with you.
and I would honestly be love to see Houston get a wild card. That would throw everyone off. But man, I think there's a right way to do a rebuild, and then there's the comfortable way to do a rebuild. And I think Carolina went more with comfort, and the Texans went more with like, let's just go for it, and it's paying off.
Yeah, but I think that almost has to go through the amount of years that Houston just stood by and let old players after old players after old players after old players sit on their roster and leave them into the middle of the road or less. You know, I believe they drafted Deshaun Watson early.
They did, they did,
He
yes.
had one good season when they went 4-12. The team had one good season overall with him as a quarterback when they went to the playoffs. They wound up losing to the Titans, if I'm not mistaken.
Well,
Um,
there was actually two times that they went to the playoffs in the wild card round. His rookie year, they lost to the Bills in the wild card round, and
mhm,
then the second year was when they went to the divisional round to Kansas City, and that's when
Kansas
Kansas City
City.
had that big comeback.
Right, right, right. Um, so I think at this point in the time, they just said, "Fuck it, fire sale. Everyone's new drafting, new scouting, new coaching, and we're gonna start there."
Mm-hmm.
That is the blueprint lately, and I got to give my hat to a lot of these new coaches who are really starting to revamp these teams. You know, coach for the Texans, coach for the Lions, coach for the Dolphins. All these teams that have spent years essentially at rock bottom, floating, just getting by, have brought in a brand new staff, and it's like a breath of fresh air.
Mm-hmm.
That's Carolina should follow suit, fire sale, dump everybody, and start new and see where it goes from there. It may take 5 years after the fire sale. It may take that long. Be prepared for that. But take it with a grain of salt that come year 6 and year 7, people are going to start turning heads and questioning, can something happen in Carolina? Because
Mm-hmm.
right now, there's a very solid answer, and that answer is no. There is nothing in Carolina.
It takes about 3 years. It takes about 3 years for a head coach to really implement the players that he wants into the scheme that he wants. For instance, Nick Sirianni, his first year, they went 9-8. Actually, no. Yeah, they went 9-8. Second year, they made it to the Super Bowl. This year, they're looking like the best team in the NFC. So it takes about
Right.
2 to 3 years. This is Dan Campbell, head coach of the Lions, his third year in the league, and the Lions look like the best team in the NFC North. There's a bright future in Houston, and I'm very happy to see it, and I'm very happy to see C.J. Stroud doing what he's doing in Houston because Houston is just one of those snake bitten franchises, man, and they deserve better, and this is that better. And I'm much like you and I, we've talked about the Lions last year and the year prior that there's something special happening in Detroit. There's something special happening in Houston, and I love to
I
see it.
agree with that. There's definitely something brewing in Houston, and you'll love to see it because, again, when the underdog teams start to rise up and they start punching the proverbial defenders in the teeth and they start going 10 rounds with the heavy hitters, it gets fun, and that's when it gets exciting.
Oh, absolutely, man. And that's why I honestly can't wait for this matchup just to see what both teams can showcase against one another.
Yeah, I kind of hope the Panthers come out with the nothing to lose mentality and they just want to inflict as much physical altercation as they can and maybe come out with a W. And for Houston, I want to see them stay calm, cool, don't let their ride of momentum get to their heads and just play their game and do their craft.
Yeah, man. And that's why again, you look at this matchup on paper and it's like, oh man, Texans Panthers is not really that no, no, no. there's a lot of layers to this,
There's a lot of
and
layers to
and
this.
I'm glad we were able to talk about these two teams.
I agree.
So, any final thoughts on this matchup? Oh, I think we lost Chris Palmer there for a second, but that's okay. So yes, that is the tale of two rebuilds. So hopefully we connect with Chris Palmer in just a second, and I think we have him back,
Yeah, I'm back.
and he's back.
I am back. I don't know what happened there.
Okay, we'll
Um,
we'll blame it on Frank Wright. Don't worry.
yeah, I don't know where I was at, but let's just move on. It's gonna be a
Okay,
very exciting game.
okay, okay. Let's just move on to the Saints and the Colts. This is a matchup that is going to be very interesting, and I'm actually excited for this one. Um, but Chris Palmer, you start us off on this one.
Yeah, I was kind of interested with this one. Kind of wanted to watch. I wanted to talk this game more so for the Colts. You and I can agree to disagree. I really like what I saw from the secondary last week against the Colts playing the Browns.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said in the recap, Deshaun Watson is not it. The Browns are playing much worse when he's on the field. PJ Walker had a very good game to bring them back into the game. But there's something about the secondary in the Colts that really made the Browns look like children. When it comes to their coverage schemes, they're swarming to the ball, their aggression, they're working together.
Mm-hmm.
When you look down forward at the front seven, that's where the crux of the issues with the Colts defense is. For some reason, they run a 34 defense in a 4-3 in a 4-3 league. They're running a 34 defense still. Reason not understood, but what I mean by that is when you look at your front seven, you have three defensemen. You have two people on the edge, and one person is either lined up head over the center or he's lined up in one of the A gaps in between the guards or the center. He doesn't really leave and go into the tackle. That would leave obviously way too wide of a gap. But the Browns' offensive line is one of the best in the league, hands down. They don't have a good quarterback, but that offensive line is ridiculous. You cannot run three men on that offensive line. And then you go back into the linebacker core. All you have is DeForest Buckner, and he's aged bad. He's not aging well in Indy. So they're another team where it's like you need to start looking at who's on the field and who's off the field, telling your people what to do, and you got to start moving off of your older talent and start looking at newer talent. Very unfortunate that Christian Richardson is not going to be in for the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
But that Minshew madness, baby. I still like the way he plays. He brings a little bit of electricity to the team. And it's fun watching him on the field sometimes.
I was gonna say, Minshew Mania is just a really fun thing to watch, and I think we're just watching Minshew Mania at its finest right now.
I agree.
Um. Okay. Yeah. So I like your assessment there. I disagree that the Colts have a good secondary because it's just as much as yes, their front defensive line is just not that good because they gave up so many rushing yards to so many different players on the Browns last week. But PJ Walker was still able to throw them in the game. He was still able to make the throws that was necessary, especially on third down. Uh, I don't think the Colts have a good defense nor a good secondary. I think that I do want to give a shout out to a player of them, Zaire Franklin. Probably a name that no one's ever heard of, but he is this is his sixth year playing in the league, all for the Colts, and so far he has 88 tackles in 7 games so far. This dude is killing it on that defense right now. But what that's telling me is that for a linebacker to have so many tackles, it means that there's a lot of people open in the secondary that he's getting to. So that means that teams are passing the ball and able to pass the ball. And we've seen it time and time again for the Colts, where it's like the Jags are able to throw on them very well. Uh, the Texans were able to throw on them very well. The Browns were able to do it, and they give up as a defense. They give up 27 points a game on average, which is really not that well. I mean, was the 4 picks great? Absolutely, I'll take 4 picks any day. But when you give up 39 points, that's a bit 32 because one of those touchdowns was actually from the defense on the offense. Miles
That
Garrett
was a
basically,
weird play too.
yeah,
That was a really weird play. I saw that go down.
he sacked, force fumbled him in his own end zone, and then they recovered, and that was a touchdown for the Browns. So, but they still gave up 32 points as a defense, and that's a lot, man. It's a lot of bleeding, and
It's bleeding. I agree.
but what gets me is that this matchup against the Saints is pretty good between both of them. It's going to challenge both teams because so the Colts give up 27 points on defense on average between these 7 games. Their offense scores about 25 points a game, which is pretty good, pretty solid, even for like Gardner Minshew. Like, who would have thought? I mean, Gardner Minshew right now, he has 1,187 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. I mean, in 7 games, he's played all 7 games because of just the injuries to Anthony Richardson. So he's on the field and he's gelling with Michael Pittman, who has 489 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Josh Downs, the rookie, who has 401 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he's gelling with these wide receivers, man, and he's splitting the ball pretty well. So I got to say, Minshew's playing very good. But the Saints are on the opposite end, where it's like they have a good defense, but not a solid offense. The Saints' offense, they score on average about 19 points a game, which is far less than what the Colts average at 25. But their defense allows 18 points a game on average. So that's pretty solid. That they have actually the 4th ranked defense in the league at this current point in time.
Oh,
But they struggle to put up points, man. And especially when rubber hits the road, like it did last week on Thursday night against the Jags, and the Saints really need to score points. It took them a long time to really rev up those engines and get it going, man. It took them a while to get it. I mean, Kamara can do it, but he can't be the only one doing it. Chris Olave, I mean, now he's got.
I don't even think he's going to be around. He got arrested for reckless driving, doing 70 in a 30. Not like just this past weekend after the game. He was arrested. He has since been released, but there's been no notification from the Saints or the NFL Commission if he's going to continue playing or not.
You said he was released, so the Saints actually released him?
No, released from jail.
Oh, okay.
He was released from jail.
Okay,
He wasn't released from the Saints yet.
I was gonna say, I was like, oh, I didn't read that
No,
report.
no. He was released from jail. My apologies.
Okay. But even so, I would not expect him to be playing this game. But let's get Chris Olave out of here. But who else do they have besides Olave? They have Michael Thomas, right? They have
One is always hurt. You're right.
Yeah. They have Jake Moreau, who dropped that touchdown in the end zone. But like their offense is just really not what it needs to. And Derek Carr, he's playing
He's a segue quarterback at this point now.
He's playing okay. He has 1,600 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. He's playing very safe, right? He's not taking those big shots. Whereas Minshew, he's taking those shots. He does not care. Like, he just does not care at all. But man, I got to say, like, both of these teams are going to really challenge. If the game goes one way, right? Can the Saints slow down the Colts offense, right? Can they do that? Or can the Saints keep up with the Colts offense? And that's really the big question there is who sets the tone? That's going to be what determines this game. Who sets the tone and who's going to follow suit? And that's why I think this is a very good game to keep your eye on.
You see, this game we kind of talk about this to nauseam, but this is really going to be one of those games where it's going to be won at the line of scrimmage within the first quarter. Um, you look at both the defensive front and the offensive front on both teams, and they're pretty much mirror matches. The Colts' defensive front is weak. The Saints' offensive line is pretty strong, but Derek Carr can't really get the ball to where he needs to be at this point. Flip the script. That front seven on New Orleans is nasty. They are nasty. They get after it. They like getting home. And that Colts offense needs help. That offensive line needs a lot of help. So Gardner Minshew is gonna have his luck cut out for him this week because he's gonna have Cam Jordan breathing down his neck all game. And if he does get a ball off, he's gonna have Tyrann Mathieu to worry about in the backfield.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where shit gets interesting.
Yeah, and Marcus Lattimore too.
Lattimore.
One last thing I will say, Cam Jordan, I think he's slowing down in his age. He's not he's not really the impact player, that he just once was. He has 19 tackles and 1 sack so far this year. I mean, granted, Cam Jordan, he's probably going to be a Hall of Famer. I would put him in the Hall of Fame easily.
In time, not first ballot though.
No. But I got to say, I think he's really slowing down right now because right now, a lot of the bulk of the pass rush comes from Carl Granderson. 29 tackles, 4.5 sacks. He's a fifth-year player, all played for the Saints. So a lot of guys, a lot of the big names that we've talked about in years past, they're starting to slow down a little bit, which is fine because now, the league is shifting. A lot of the younger guys are going to get their chances. So, but also I want to give a shout out to Demario Davis. He's still getting it done at the linebacker position. 42 tackles and 2.5 sacks. So that's so he's keeping up. But Cam Jordan, I want to see a little bit more out of you, Cam. I love you, but I need to see a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree.
But
it's going to be a lot of fun though.
Oh, this game is going to be so much fun. Anytime Minshew's on the field, of course it's fun.
It's just, again, because he just plays. He reminds me of Ryan Fitzpatrick because they know their backups. They know they're probably not going to get the start once whoever comes back. So fuck it. I'm going to go play the way I want to play it. I'm going to have some fun.
It's the fuck it mentality, and I fucking love it.
Right. And that's the mentality of a lot of backups. Like, even look at over in New Orleans, Peyton Hillis. No, not Peyton Hillis. Sorry, that's
Taysom Hill.
Taysom Hill. I said Peyton Hillis because I'm thinking of the Browns for some reason. Taysom Hill. The kid's fucking tough, and he's just a good backup. Obviously, we know what happens if he gets the start. He can't really play, but he's a fucking wild, loose cannon backup. These loose cannon backups are a lot of fun to watch play, man.
And that's good. That's what's going to make this game so fun to watch, and I can't wait for it. So, with that being said, that's the Saints and the Colts. Let's move on to our third game that we wanted to talk about, and that is the Rams and the Cowboys. Woo, man, this is going to be a fun game. I'm excited for this one. So, Chris Palmer, you mind if I start us off on this one?
Go right ahead.
Oh, man. So, Cowboys were on a bye last week. Rams, they lost to the Steelers last week. Good solid win for your Steelers. But, man, Matt Stafford, he's slinging it, man. He has the fuck it mentality right now. If we're gonna be sticking with that, he's got the fuck it mentality. He's got 1,908 yards, 7 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He's averaging about 272 yards a game, which is insane. He's got a rookie called Puka Nacua. Yep. I don't think anyone we've ever talked about this kid. He has 752 yards.
Right, who is this kid and where did he come from?
In the first 7 games, that's insane. And Cooper Kupp's back, and he looks to be Cooper Kupp as normal. And it's just, oh my God, the Cowboys. I've been talking about all year, man. That I really love this Cowboys defense this year. They are absolutely lethal but they're in for a challenge. And I cannot wait to see Matt Stafford on the field against that Dallas defense. That Dallas defense gives up, on average, 16 points a game. Obviously, yeah, we saw them give up 42 to the 49ers, but on average, they're giving up 16 points a game. That is, you can't ask for anything better than that from a defense. And oh man, they have, what was it, 16 sacks, 32 passes defended, 8 interceptions, 6 forced fumbles. Micah Parsons has 5 sacks. They are just rolling. But man, Stafford is going to challenge them, and I'm so excited to see this matchup.
You see, it's always good to see when Matt Stafford is healthy. You know, really got to give my hat off. Remember, we were all really nervous due to a spinal cord injury that affected him at the end of last year.
Yeah.
We were all kind of nervous if he was going to be able to perform this year.
Mm-hmm.
He put that one to rest real fucking quick, didn't he?
Oh yeah.
Dude can still play. He is playing at the top of his game. Love watching Matt Stafford play healthy. But now again, I have to agree with you that Dallas defense is fucking for real. They are one of the single most lethal linebacker cores, like true linebackers. Micah Parsons is different. It's like him and Fred Warner, true linebackers, and everyone else is just in the mid. Like, Fred Warner's in a fucking level of his own. He's a different beast animal. But Micah Parsons is not far from becoming his own beast.
Well, Micah Parsons is actually an outside linebacker, so he's
But
not
he's still
really
a true linebacker.
he does not play coverage though. That's the thing. He's primarily just rushing the passer. He's like a
Right.
TJ Watt in that sense, where it's like
Yeah.
he's a linebacker by nature, like by position, right? But he's much like TJ Watt, where it's like he's rushing the passer 90% of the game. 10% of he's in coverage.
Right.
Fred
He's
Warner,
a pass rushing linebacker. Fred Warner is a coverage back.
he's a coverage backer. So it's like there's a difference in linebacker there, but I understand what you're saying where it's like he's just on a
Realm
whole
of
nother level.
athleticism. It's just
Oh, yeah.
different.
Oh yeah.
That's the only comparison I really mean to make is
Okay.
their level of athleticism when they're on the field. Like, they are simply the best player on the field.
Agreed.
And it's not close. Like, they're simply the most aggressive person on that defense, on their respective defenses. They're simply the most dominant person on the field when their defenses are on the field. Everywhere the ball is, they're there making commotion happen.
Mm-hmm.
But that offensive line in LA, man, I feel like they're going to really have their time cut out for them when it comes to picking up Micah Parsons. And then also, let's not forget about Van Der Esch, man. He is still there, and he is still putting in work. You know, Micah Parsons may be that blitzing back. Van Der Esch is that all-around back in Dallas right now, keeping the center completely secure so Micah can go in and run like a madman. So the two of them as a duo is absolutely astronomical and out of this world. I love the Dallas defense. You really don't really hear me buy into Dallas a lot. That defense has me sold.
Yeah, their defense is absolutely lethal, and I want to flip it a little bit. I want to talk about that Dallas offense against that Rams defense. The Rams defense has actually been very lackluster this year. That's probably the word I would use for this Rams defense. Aaron Donald, hey, we love Aaron Donald, man. He's a great player, Hall of Famer. Only 2.5 sacks this year so far. Hey, they have 12 sacks in total and only 3 interceptions. So they are really not as dominant as they have been in years past. But that Dallas offense, man, when they're clicking on all cylinders, they can score. They can really score. CeeDee Lamb, he has 475 yards and a touchdown, and Tony Pollard is 370 yards. Their leading rusher with 3 touchdowns. They're striving for a more balanced offense in Dallas, and I really like to see it. I want to give a shout out to a rising star, pun intended, to Jake Ferguson, the tight end for the Cowboys. Dak has really loved this kid. He's a rookie, and Dak is really giving him a lot of love. He's tied for the third most targets amongst the Dallas receivers. So Dak is really looking for the tight ends, and keep your eye out for Jake Ferguson. Um, but man, I gotta say, I'm really curious to see how Stafford challenges the the Dallas defense. But I know Dak and the Cowboys, they're going to put points on the board against that Rams offense. Oh, sorry, that Rams defense, because that Rams defense is just not what it was. It's just they don't have that other complementary end in Ike Ibukum. He's in Indy now,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have anyone to really compliment him on that. Obviously, they had what was it, Bobby Wagner for that one season last year,
Bobby
but
Wagner. They had Von Miller.
they did
They
have Von
had
Miller.
Ndamukong Suh.
The Rams do better when they have a complementary pass rusher on the opposite end of Aaron Donald, and it
And
seems
they
like
had
they
Jalen
just
Ramsey.
oh yeah, and Jalen Ramsey, but also Leonard Floyd as well. Like
Right.
they don't have that this year. So their offense is like, hey, look, you just double Aaron Donald every play, okay, and then we do what we got to do.
Right. Outside of Aaron Donald, that defense is a bunch of really, again, young to middle of the road career guys who really haven't made that much of a name for themselves. And we're kind of still hanging on to that Super Bowl Rams defense. But all those players other than Aaron Donald are gone. They're no longer around.
Yeah.
Bobby Wagner's no longer around. Jalen Ramsey's no longer around.
Mm-hmm.
Ndamukong Suh's no longer around. Von Miller's no longer around. So his entire support group is gone. And again, nothing against Aaron Donald. He's one of the best DNs in the league. He's going to go down as one of the greatest DNs of all time.
Oh yeah.
But with that being said, he never has, never will be able to do it alone. It's a full team event.
Mm-hmm.
As good as he is, as soon as you realize he's the best, there's going to be two bodies on him.
Yep.
Just like over in Cleveland with Myles Garrett, there's two bodies on him. TJ Watt, there's two bodies on him. The Bosa brothers, there's two bodies on them always. Look at Jalen Carter. Now he's drawing two bodies. It's just what happens when you become a pinpoint star on a defensive front. You will find two people. And if you don't have a complementary player to go through that open hole, it is going to maul and defeat your offense 100% of the time. And that's where the Rams are at right now. And it's unfortunate to see.
Yeah. Can they still compete in the NFC?
Maybe.
Possibly for a wild card. But if they really want to get right, this is the game to do it. To really kind of showcase, because Cowboys get a lot of attention. They're America's team. The TV networks love them. And I think if the Rams do come away with a win over the Cowboys, I think a lot of heads are going to be turning towards the Rams. Be like, okay, let's see what you got now.
It'll silence a lot of things. Like it'll lower a couple of red flags. I wouldn't say necessarily take them off, but it would lower them a little bit if they were able to silence the Dallas defense and come out on top.
Mm-hmm.
But if Dallas beats LA, what questions for LA do we have now? Do we have what's next? Do we have where is Aaron Donald going to go? Do those questions start to pop? That's my theory.
Well, my thing is, this is the big question for me.
Mm-hmm.
What does a post Matt Stafford Rams team look like? Like when Matt Stafford's gone and all the vets are gone and they embrace a rebuild. What does that team look like?
Carolina.
Well, it could look like Carolina, and it could look like Houston, depending on whichever way they go. But they still have Sean McVay for a couple of number of years, and they still have Aaron Donald for a couple of number of years, and those are going to be the anchors. But I want to see, what does this team look like? What does this team look like when it embraces the rebuild? When it embraces youth? That's what I want to see.
That's the interesting thing, because we all remember Aaron Donald said that when McVay is done, he is done.
Yeah.
So if McVay says, I'm done, it's pretty much telltale that Aaron Donald is done too.
Well, Aaron Donald's got 3 more years on his contract, so we'll see.
We'll have to see.
So that's going to be a very fun matchup to watch. So With that being said, let's move on to our final game that we wanted to discuss, and that is the Bengals against the San Francisco 49ers. Chris Palma, start us off, my brother.
Blood is in the water, man. It's just really what it is when it comes to the 49ers. I'm going to start with the 49ers now with Brock Purdy in concussion protocol. Brock Purdy, I hope you come out on top and you heal and you're able to play on Sunday. If you don't, and Sam Darnold has to go in, we're going to see such a mortal 49ers team we have not seen yet.
Mm-hmm.
With the missing of Trent, if Trent Williams is missing and Sam Darnold has to go in, it is not going to be okay because Sam Darnold does not have the improvisation skills that Brock Purdy has. He has skills to improvise and move. I'm not going to call him what everyone else has been calling Brock Purdy. He's not an elite quarterback. He's in a great system. Kid can play. He's becoming a very good quarterback. I will not consider him elite just yet. You need to do this, what you've been doing, for another full season without getting hurt. And if that's how you can perform next year, maybe we'll start that conversation with you. You are on a very high progression rate. But as soon as focal points on your offense were taken out, it started to show. Your issues started to show. Your problems behind the line started to show. The lack of discipline on the depth chart started to show. So there's a lot of things that are starting to show with the 49ers that I'm pretty sure a lot of people are keeping the blinders on because they're saying, oh, they're a Super Bowl team. They're a Super Bowl team. You got to look at them as a full team, not just a starting lineup. Flip it over to the Bengals. I said it a couple weeks ago. I feel like the fire is out, or it's going out in Cincy. I still love Joe Burrow as a quarterback. Jamar Chase, I think, is one of the most special wide receivers to come in a very long time. I feel like they've been figured out. I really do. I feel like they've been figured out. This is going to be a very telling game on both ends. If the Bengals cannot put 35 up, there should be some questions drawn as to why can't they score points anymore either.
So, I want to start with the 49ers.
Go ahead.
Because up until the first 5 weeks of the season, they looked like the best team in all football. And then they lost to the Browns. And then they lost to the Vikings. In both big surprise upsets. But why did they lose to those teams? Why? Right? So I looked at the film for the Browns game and the Vikings game, and there's some similarities there. So obviously the better team won. But what do I mean by that? Both Cleveland and Minnesota not only dominated pass yards and rushing yards, but also time of possession as well. Both of them did that. Okay. Now, if you remember, I forget when we talked about the 49ers, but I know we did.
2 or something.
Or I think I said it last. We said it. I said it in a recent time that I compared him to like a young Tom Brady, in like the 2003 2002 era, where Tom Brady was just kind of like plucked from the draft, put into the system, and the system is just built on solid defense and playmakers around you, right? And then he's just like, just keep it going. Don't lose us the game. Don't lose us the game, right? But Tom Brady had a killer weakness that if teams were able to exploit, it brought them down.
You talking about pressure?
Pressure. It's the pressure. And Brock Purdy has that same thing. I think I agree with you in the sense that he is becoming an elite quarterback. He's not there yet. Top 10, it's still, you could still debate that. Obviously, Kirk Cousins, he's slinging dick right now, and he's fucking killing it right now in Minnesota.
Right.
So he threw for 387 yards on that defense. 387 yards. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. But yet, Brock Purdy, he struggled both of those games because of the pressure that Myles Garrett was in his face the whole game, and Danielle Hunter was in his face the whole game. And we talked about Danielle Hunter as well. He had 8 sacks. He had 8 sacks so far going into that game. I can't recall if he did get one or not. He probably did. But like he's playing his gourd out right now. But he's not an improviser. I disagree with you on that. I don't think he's an improviser. He can't do what say like because we've seen what the best improviser looks like, and that's Mahomes. Mahomes like he just makes magic happen. Purdy doesn't make magic happen. He lets others make magic for him, and that's a big difference. McCaffrey, Ayuk, Debo, those are all the magic men right there. Purdy like allows them to do. He gets the ball to them to make their best plays. But he does when the pressure is on. When the pressure is on, he's a completely different quarterback. And right now, the Bengals, they do have what it takes to really get in Brock Purdy's face and really make him uncomfortable throughout this day. Now, the Bengals, I want to talk about the Bengals real quick. Have they been struggling so far in the beginning of this year? Yes, because the Bengals average on offense 16.5 points a game. That's not enough, right? And their defense gives up on average about 21 points a game. That's doable, okay? Their defense is actually a little bit better than people think. They I want to just read some stats real quick. So that's Cincinnati defense. Where am I looking at? Okay, so they have 19 sacks so far this year, 8 interceptions, 3 forced fumbles, and 31 tackles for a loss. I want to compare that to San Fran's defense: 15 sacks, 34 tackles for a loss, 2 forced fumbles, and 11 interceptions. So we think that the 49ers defense is like the best, right? The Bengals numbers right there, they're right there. Like they are having a really good defense despite getting rid of their 2 best players last year, Von Bell and Jesse Bates. What was it? Dax Hill, their safety that they drafted last year in the first overall? He is emerging, man. He is emerging as a great safety for them, and he's really getting it done. Now, the Bengals offense, I think you're right. It's predictable. People know how to beat, like at least stall their offense because they have a 3-to-1 pass-to-run ratio. They look to pass 3 times more than they look to run. What was it? This is what kills me. Joe Mixon has 366 out of their 419 total rushing yards. He's basically all that they have running the ball right now. They really needed Samaje Perine to keep him. They really needed to keep him because you need a more balanced offense. And I think that's what, if the Bengals have any hope for this game, it's to keep that offense off the field, slow the ball, run the ball, and don't be predictable, man. Because your defense, they can really get in the face of Brock Purdy. And right there, that can really stall out that 49ers offense. They have the keys to victory. It's if they use them properly.
I really feel that absence of Trent Williams is clipping the 49ers at the knees. It is
absolutely.
such a detrimental loss. And, I'll give it, again, the defense of the Bengals is going to cause havoc. But again, not having his presence on the field is going to be all the worse. It's just, to me, that's the most pivotal injury on that offensive front is not having Trent Williams. I'm sorry. It's more than Christian McCaffrey. It's more than Debo. It's more than Brandon Ayuk. It's more important. And that's, I won't be swayed on that one. It is the most pivotal injury because it causes the most.
These 2 past games prove your point.
Right. It's just too important to not have a star left tackle. You can have another receiver. You can have another halfback. There's only one Trent Williams.
Yeah. And that's so important. Like when you think of the game of football, we think whatever images you have in your mind, you have like a quarterback throwing the ball to a wide receiver, stuff like that. you don't think of how important the offensive line is until it's not there. And then you're like, I mean, just look at the Giants. They're a total mess because they have the worst offensive line in the league. Daniel Jones is getting sacked at the wazoo, and which caused him to get injured. Teams that have the best offensive lines in the league tend to be some of the best teams in the league. You protect your quarterback, you create rushing lanes, you do all the things that you do the unsexy plays. No one's going to ever congratulate, oh man, look at that block, man, that was huge. I mean, obviously you and I will, and probably some other people will, but it's like, we don't think of that when you think of the highlights, right? You don't think of how much time a quarterback had to throw a ball 1 second sooner or a second
Right.
later, right? Because
Or a
of just
tenth of a
how
second sooner.
exactly. So Trent Williams, he's absolutely missed on that offense 100%.
And until he comes back, that Niners team is just going to struggle ever more. It's just what's going to happen, I feel. I hope he comes back for the 49ers' sake as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they need him big
They
time.
need him more than anyone that they lost, and that's a fact.
Oh, 100%. Um, any final thoughts on this game, Chris Palmer?
Um, Again, this game is going to be a very telling game for both teams. If the Bengals can decide to put away their predictability, run it a little bit more, maybe go a little bit more by committee versus doubling and tripling down with Joe Mixon, and then maybe they'll be able to air it out to other than Jamar Chase.
Mm-hmm.
The defense is going to be menacing. It's just what it is. And hopefully the defense for the 49ers can cause some havoc on the other side. But it's going to be a very, very evenly matched defensive game, and this is going to be very exciting too.
I'm really excited for this game, and I know you picked this game to discuss, and I'm glad you did because this is going to be a fun game to watch this
Mm-hmm.
upcoming week. So, with that being said, that was all the games that we wanted to talk about this week, and man, there were a lot of them. And again, we probably just could have kept going and kept going, but let's make some picks, Chris Palmer. You ready to make some picks right now?
Yeah, let's move on to who you got.
Who you got, Chris Palmer? Who you got for the Thursday night game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the Buffalo Bills? Who you got?
Baker Buck versus the Bills. I'm gonna go with the Bills. I trust the Bucks less than I don't trust the Bills. I don't trust Baker Mayfield. So, what do you
I
got?
I'm gonna go with the Bills as well. I Bills prime time at home. It just smells like it's just ready for Josh Allen to just put a showcase up. And I don't know what Bucks team I'm going to get with Baker. Shake and bake, baby. Not today. We're not going to be baking with him. We're going to be
Not
baking with
today.
the Bills. So I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills as well. Let's continue on in New York for the Battle of New York, the New York Jets versus the New York Giants. Chris Palmer, who you got?
You know what? I'm gonna go with the Jets on this one. I believe in the Williams brothers, Quinnen and Quincy Williams. I think they're gonna be absolute menaces on that Jets defense for the Giants, and they're gonna hold the Giants to under 14 points.
I hope so, man. I'm also going to go with the Jets on this one as well. I think that uh, I think Daniel Jones is expected to return for this game,
Mm,
but even if he is, that does
don't
not.
expect much.
It's not going to solve their problems. They still have a lot of problems with the offensive line and their defense. The last two games they have been a little bit more impressive, but the Jets' offense is a little bit better than Washington's. They just have what it takes, so long as Zach Wilson could just you know, do what he can. So I'm going to go with the Jets as well on this game. Um, moving forward, let's move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars against your Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to go straight out the gate. I'm going to take the Jags. I just think that their defense is becoming great. Is it great now? No, but their defense is becoming great, and their offense, man, they have a really good balanced offense with ETN, uh, Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley. They're really and Evan Ingram. They're really getting it done. I'm gonna go with the Jags on this. I'm assuming you're gonna go with your Steelers.
I'm gonna have to go with Pittsburgh right now. I almost wanted to talk this game, but I didn't. This game would have been really cool to talk about, but there was more interesting teams to talk about this week. But I'm excited for this game. This game is a coin flip for me, but I'm going to go with Pittsburgh out of loyalty. But I wouldn't be upset if I saw the Jaguars come out with a win.
No, I think this is going to be a very entertaining game to watch, and I most certainly will be watching it
100%.
on Sunday. So that's going to be a great game. Let's move on to the Philadelphia Eagles, moving on, going to play the Washington Commanders. Chris Palmer, who you got?
This should really kind of be a wash. I'm going to go with Philly. This should be Philly by 20.
I'm going to go with Philly on this, but I think it's actually going to be a lot closer than we think. Philly is their defense is very mortal, very susceptible to being thrown upon. And it wasn't that long ago before Washington kind of almost upset the Eagles in Philly. But we don't know what kind of Washington team we're going to get. That's the thing. So with that being said, I'm going to take Philly, but I wouldn't be, if I were the Eagles, I would not walk into this game so comfortable.
Cool.
So let's move on to one of the games that we talked about, the Los Angeles Rams against the Dallas Cowboys. Chris Palmer, who you got?
I'm going to go with the Rams. I'm going to give Matt Stafford the benefit of the doubt that he's going to be able to come in with that veteran mentality and beat up on them young boys on defense.
Oh, I respect it, man. I'm so excited for that matchup of Matt Stafford and that offense against that Dallas defense. It's going to be the matchup of the week. I'm going to go with Dallas on this one. I just think that not only is their defense really good, but their offense complements them very well. And again, if their offense and defense plays up to the level that they can go against anyone. So with that being said, I'm going to go with Dallas, and I don't blame you for taking the Rams. I was kind of 50-50 on that. So let's move on to the Minnesota Vikings against the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to go with the Vikings on this one. You know me, I have a little soft spot for the Vikings. Kirk Cousins is playing out of his gourd right now, and I know he probably won't get MVP considerations, but he should because he's been playing extremely well. Chris Palmer, who you got?
You know, I have to agree with. There's no reason why Kirk Cousins' name shouldn't be in the hat for MVP at this point in time. I just want that one to be known as a fact. I'm gonna go with the Vikings too. Harrison Smith is still a dog. I don't want anyone to forget that. That man's a dog, and he's gonna fight all game against Romeo Dobbs. He makes that kid look like an absolute child.
Well, I love Harrison Smith, man. You know he's one of my favorites, and I can't wait to see it. And especially if we're getting the teams that we saw last week, the Vikings that we saw last week, and the Packers that we saw last week. I think this would be a very easy win for the Vikings at that point. But it's a divisional game; anything can happen.
Anything can happen.
Anything could happen. So let's move on to some interconference teams in the Atlanta Falcons and the Tennessee Titans. Chris Palmer, who you got?
I think I'm gonna go round 2 with the Falcons, man. There was something that I saw last week. It looked really fucking good, and that Titans defense has a lot of holes. So I'm gonna go with the Falcons.
Yeah, I am gonna go with the Falcons as well with you on this one. I just love the Falcons are one of those teams, much like the Texans. They're doing a lot with those young players. Tyler Algier. We didn't have Bijan last week due to a hangover, but but Tyler Algier, you still have Cordell Patterson running the ball as well. Kyle Pitts, hopefully they throw him the ball, and Desmond Ridder gets done. And I think Tennessee, I think you sent me an article, I think it was, if not today, yesterday, how they're going to be alternating quarterbacks this upcoming week.
Yep. They're playing quarterback by committee this weekend. There's an idea that they're going to do a fire sale. There's been rumor that they're putting their feelers out with Derrick Henry, but no one's getting back to them. So, rumor on the street is that there's going to be a fire sale in Tennessee before the trade deadline.
Keep your eyes on that. That is going to be big. I mean, Tennessee did get rid of their best defensive player, Kevin Byard, to the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yep. Which was very surprising.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Atlanta, and you're going to go with Atlanta. We're going to go Dirty Birds all day.
Dirty Birds.
Dirty Birds. So let's move on to the New England Patriots against the Miami Dolphins. Chris Palmer, who you got?
Again, as the record doesn't show the Patriots right now, I think. We just spoke about them last week.
Mhm.
And like I said, Bill Belichick is a chess master when it comes to playing his division. The Dolphins are very, very good right now. I think I'm still going to go with the Patriots, though. There's something about
Ooh.
watching Bill Belichick playing a divisional matchup that you can never, ever count him out when it comes to playing an AFC East team. So for that, I'm going to go with the Patriots. Sorry, T.
I respect it, man, and especially when he already has film on the other team because he played the Dolphins
He
early.
has 20 years worth of film on the Dolphins, and especially this team.
Yes, so, but obviously this team is not what the Dolphins were many, many years ago and stuff. But
Right,
he did play them earlier this year, week 2. They were Sunday night primetime, and
right.
it was a very close game. So Belichick does know how to play them. There are a couple things that I do want to consider this. Historically, Patriots do not do good in Miami for whatever reason. They just don't, even
Right.
when Tom Brady was there. And there's a hurricane down south as well at this point in time, at this time of recording. And I think it just hit landfall, if I'm not mistaken,
In
yesterday.
Mexico?
Yeah, but Florida is getting the tail end of it, and it should be a very
Mhm.
rainy game this Sunday in Miami. So I'm gonna go with the Dolphins more so out of comfort. But
Okay.
if I were the Dolphins, I would not be comfortable
You can't be comfortable.
because the Patriots they're starting to march.
They're
So
just they're just that good still. Don't sleep on them.
don't sleep on them. So I'm gonna go with the Dolphins in this one. Um, let's move on to the New Orleans Saints and the Indianapolis Colts. Chris Palmer, who you got?
So I'm gonna go with the Colts on this one, man.
Ooh, okay.
Um, yeah, I think the Colts they're just a quarterback away from fucking being right there again. Again, losing Richardson this year is terrible, but that offense is still clicking. You
Yeah,
know, and a healthy Jonathan Taylor helps all the more for Vista Minshew to come in and start playing.
absolutely. I'm gonna go with the Colts as well. They just keep putting points on the board. Doesn't matter who's playing. Next man up. They just keep putting points and points up. I do think the Saints they're gonna make it a close game though. Um, I expect a big game out of Alvin Kamara because the Browns were able to run very successfully through that Indy D line. So I would expect New Orleans to kind of think the same way. Just exploit those running gaps and get down the field. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm still gonna go with the Colts for a win. Hopefully the refs don't screw you this time around. So let's move on to Carolina, the Carolina Panthers and the Houston Texans. I'm gonna go with the Houston Texans on this one. I just like the way they've been playing, man. Much like the Colts, they're just putting points on the board.
Yeah, the Panthers moving to 07 this year, man. It's the Texans are on a roll, and the Panthers are on the blacktop. It's just what it is. They're just waiting for next year now.
Yep. So you're gonna go with the Texans as well?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Cleveland and Seattle, Chris Palmer, who you got?
This is another one that could go both ways, but I don't want to go for the Browns, but that defense is hard to say no to. I'm gonna go with the Browns, man. I think the
Ooh,
Browns are gonna come away with this one.
ooh.
As much as we like seeing Geno Smith in his Seattle Seahawks uniform, that Browns team is more complete through and through. The more, like I said, the more complete team wins, the Browns are more complete than Seattle. Seattle still has a bunch of missing pieces.
Yeah, man. And Seattle does have a lot of missing pieces, and they have to find an answer for number 95, Miles Garrett. They have to
And
find
there
an answer
just
for him.
doesn't seem to be one.
I'm gonna go with Seattle. I think that their defense, much like we saw last year, they have a lot of young players on that defense that I just really like. Tariq Woolen, Quandre Diggs, Michael Jackson. They have a lot, and they still have Bobby Wagner and Devin Bush there. I like their defense a lot, and I think I like it especially in Seattle. So I'm gonna go with the Seahawks on this one.
Cool.
And Michael Jackson ain't dead, man. He's just playing it for the Seahawks.
Right, he's just a pro football player now.
So, Chris Palmer, Cincinnati Bengals, San Francisco 49ers. Who's going to win?
Fuck the Bengals. I'm going with the 49ers with all their blood and missing of Trent Williams. Fuck the Bengals.
You know, I was going to go with the Bengals, but I love that philosophy, man. Just fuck the Bengals. I'm going to go with the 49ers. I think you know what it is now? It's like, look,
Fucking bumcats.
you have enough film that to really be like, okay, look, this is why we lost. If someone like me can be like, this is why you're losing, I think the coaches can do it tenfold. And I
Right.
think that they can relate to the players as like, look, you gotta stop. You
Doing
gotta stop
this.
Trey Hendrickson. You gotta stop like all these like pass rushers from getting to Brock Purdy. I'm gonna go with the
Or Sam Darnold.
yeah, or Sam Darnold too. So but they still have a lot of playmakers. So I'm going to go with the 49ers on this. I don't feel comfortable with that pick, but I'm going to go with them for this game.
It feels dirty going for the Bengals. I
I,
don't.
it does, but I
feels
mean, I
dirty.
picked them before, but
I know. You won't see me going for them.
I respect it. Kansas City and Denver. Should I even ask?
Denver. Come on now. That's probably the wash of the week. Sorry, Ted.
Chiefs are going for 17 straight wins on the Broncos, so let's see if they can get that. My Ravens against the Cardinals. I'm taking my Ravens, of course I am.
Yep, I'm going to take you guys as well. This should be no problem. But this should be one where you're watching with all eyes open on your offense and on your defense. It's not the big games where you see your flaws. It's the small games where you see your flaws.
Yes.
And you hope that they don't get exploited in the big games.
Yes. I do want to say I do love how the Ravens defense is playing. I've been a big advocate of them for their defense this whole year. And yeah, man. Hopefully there'll be a game in the near future. There's some Ravens games in the near future I do want to talk about, but going with my Ravens, baby. Sunday night primetime, Chicago Bears against the Los Angeles Chargers. I'm going to go with the Chargers on this one. Chris Palmer, who you got?
I'm going to go with the Bears on this one. I feel like they have a higher capability of being able to close a game out.
Okay.
You know, time and time again, I want to give my benefit to the Chargers, and then that 2-minute drill comes up in the fourth quarter, and they just fall. You know,
Yeah.
And Chicago, as bad as their record shows, they have a very good 2-minute drill. The 2-minute drill is very solid.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're going to win on that premise alone, is they can play a full 4 quarters.
I respect it, man. I hope this is going to be a really good primetime game to watch. I think, obviously, the networks probably thought Justin Fields was obviously going to be in it, and I think we all thought that as well. But I hope this is a very competitive game. I hope it's not one-sided. As for the Monday night game as well, which is the Detroit Lions and the Las Vegas Raiders, I hope this is a very competitive game. But the Lions seem angry after last week. So the Vegas may be at the wrong place at the wrong time. But I'm going to go with the Lions on Monday night. But Chris Palmer, who you got? I know you got a soft spot for both Chicago and the Raiders, man. You got a soft spot for those teams.
Yeah, but I'm going to go with Detroit. Like you said, they got punched in the teeth, and they are not happy about it.
Oh, and no, they are not.
Unfortunately, Vegas is just going to be caught walking into the Lions' den. Literally, because they're going home. The Lions are home, so they're walking into the Lions' den with a bunch of pissed off big cats in it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love the phrasing there, my brother. Okay, that awesome. So we have our picks for this week. So everybody, thank you for watching. That concludes this episode of Let's Talk Football. We hope you enjoyed this. We have a lot of great games looking forward to. Chris Palmer, any final thoughts for our viewers out there?
Listen, I haven't said it once this year. It's any given Sunday. Anything can happen. This is going to be a very, very interesting and fun week. A lot of questions are going to start. A lot of answers are going to be answered. Here we go. This is going to be a fun week.
That's a great way of putting it. I love it. So if you like this video, please give us a like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, and we'll see you next week on Let's Talk Football.